Listen Stokely, where we try to be involved, to listen and learn for us all to evolve. So welcome to you and welcome the world. We hope you enjoy the stories to be told.
Welcome to Stokely, a podcast where we explore environmental conservation, our human mindset and adventure. Each week we invite you into conversation with people from all walks of life, people who truly inspire us and set about contributing to a greater place for us all to call home. So please take some time to settle in for a conversation today with our host, Maya.
Hi everyone and welcome to the Stokely podcast. My name's Maya Backhausen and we are on a mission to maintain the art of conversation, holding space to converse and share stories on adventure, mindset and our natural world. I really hope you're as motivated and inspired coming out of these conversations as I am, and I hope it leads you to start, sit or listen in conversation. We invite you to join us in acknowledging the traditional custodians upon the lands where this podcast is created and listened to, and pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. On this podcast, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Hannah Moloney, who aside from many achievements, is an incredibly rad and positive human with an infectious laugh. Hannah works towards restoring social, cultural and environmental balance. She teaches and designs permaculture, advocating for change from the ground. She has over 15 years experience in urban agriculture, small-scale farming, permaculture and community development, all towards building climate resilience. In 2015, she was awarded Tasmanian's Young Landcare Leader Award for her work with Good Life Permaculture and co-establishing Hobart City Farms. In 2018, she took part in Tasmania's Leaders Program, and in 2019, she started appearing as a guest presenter on Gardening Australia on ABC TV. And she was also featured in Women of the Island project. To top it all off, she also designs educational tea towels, supporting you to learn useful stuff while you dry dishes. And these are truly awesome. They have lessons on goats, compost, sauerkraut, homebrew, and flowers for bees. Like, seriously got to go check them out. They're brilliant. And finally, thank you good people for your time and energy today. I really hope you enjoy this conversation. Now let's get into it. I'm just so blown away by the world and the lifestyle and everything. And you'll explain it better of permaculture. And because you are now considered my forefront expert in that world, I can't wait to pick your brains about it.
Classic. Happy to be your expert, Mayo.
Awesome. Sweet as. Let's get to school. All right. Well, Hannah, thanks so much for having a yarn and taking some time today on this beautiful day where you are down in Lutruwita. How's it going down there?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's blue skies and sunny today with a crisp spring-like breeze blowing. So yeah, all good. Yeah. Nice.
Because what's the traditional name for Hobart, which is where you're at? What is that one?
It's Nipaluna, and we're on Milwina Country, which is around the Hobart region. Yeah.
So beautiful, eh?
Oh, it's gorgeous. And I live in the base of Kunani, Mount Wellington. So the landscape is incredibly striking where the mountain meets the sea, and we live like maybe a quarter way up Kunani, looking over Hobart, Nipaluna and the Derwent River, which is pretty stunning. Yeah.
Yeah. I love how we're being able to embrace the First Nations traditional names for places because I don't know, they just to me they just have such a beautiful sound, and they just
absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting because most of our landmarks are named after white men from England or different parts of the world. And to say Kunani it's of this land, it's of these people and of this place. And that's really evident in the feeling and the sound. And my daughter, who's now 6, she just reels them off like normal, like she should, like we all should. And that's a really heartening thing to hear and see, that these it's part of reclaiming culture and recreating how we can be into the future, living alongside First Nations people. So it's just a tiny snippet of the things that we can do in our daily lives. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think I just can't wait for that to be rolled out across Australia. And, and because like I said, it just brings so much more meaning to a place. You know, these names aren't just created, you know, and I don't want to sound like I know how it all comes about, but they've got a deeper sense of connection behind it, as opposed to this person arrived here first and we're going to call it after that person. And as you say, it's generally, like a white male, you know.
Yeah, 100%.
And over, you know, you've done quite a bit of work with, you know, trying to bridge that gap within like the gap that we see here, especially in Australia with the First Nations peoples. And how have you seen that evolve over the last kind of 10 years?
Oh, gee. Well, I guess I don't think I have done a lot of work personally, Mael. I think I do a lot of advocating from where I sit, and through all the work I do, I make sure I can centre First Nations experience and reality in the work that I do. So I never feel like that's good enough, but it is something, and there's plenty more we can do as white allies, absolutely. Saying that, over the past decade, and even probably over the past 2 decades, I've seen some really nice, heartening cultural shifts around people's acknowledgement of First Nations Australians, where previously it just wasn't. I don't know how to say it. So I grew up in a really multicultural community in Meanjin in Brisbane, in Kurilpa, West End, which is a beautiful hub for First Nations people. And to me, that was very normal. That's very normal. It's like, wonderful, we're all here. But moving away from that region and now living in Lutruwita, which is presents itself as a very white society, so just visually very white, is a shock. And there wasn't as much acknowledgement of Tasmanian Aboriginals when I first came here when I was 18, so 20 years ago, actually. But these days there is, and that's not without its challenges, obviously, but it's definitely more celebrated, because I think acknowledgement isn't always positive from some people, is what I've noticed, but the celebration is just so heartening to see. I was just riding my bike home the other day along a bike path, and I noticed lots of, you know how people knit the jumpers for the trees? Like for the tree. And the whole alleyway of Aboriginal flag tree hugs. I'm like, oh, this is so beautiful. And I had a moment of like, wow, we're tipping over to celebrating First Nations culture, not just acknowledging, which is like a different thing. It's like, yeah, because there's so much to be celebrated and so much to be proud of our amazing First Nation Australians communities. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And I think it's one of those things that it's just going to be an exponential understanding and exponential appreciation. The more we do it, it's just going to create this snowball effect where we're like, oh my Lord, like why did we not, you know, come to how has our system created such a space where we haven't embraced this a long, long time ago? We're missing out as white Australians. It's like, why wouldn't you embrace this amazing culture and centre them and their wisdom and their experiences in our country storytelling? It's just a no-brainer. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something just then, and it was, you know, about like the challenges that are associated with kind of change and whatnot, you know, and how it's not always easy to go about incorporating these, like living in this world sometimes can be quite difficult. How am I trying to put this? And I want to bring this back to kind of the book that you put out, and I guess like in a sense, the way that you live your life, and you've kind of aptly named that A Good Life. And I want to say, and I've kind of thought, you know, a good life isn't always sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes it can be that gut-wrenching challenges that you face as well. And I'd love for you to expand on that, and also just give us a little bit of insight to the book and where it all came about.
Sure. So 100% agree with you, Mael. People sometimes perceive me as this really permanently happy, sparkly person just frolicking through a garden. Like, oh, that's not true. And there's a line in my book that I wrote, a good life is a hard life. And I believe that because a good life is when you're striving to be fully authentic, as present as possible, facing up to what needs to be faced up, and working through all those things which are inherently very, very hard. My life is a really good life. However, on a daily basis, I am just challenged again and again by everything. And I remember reading something about Dolly Parton, who's a personal hero.
Yes, Dolly. Yeah.
Yeah. And Dolly was, she said something about how, she feels everything. Like she says, I have amazing highs and I have amazing lows, and that's, I think, a really human experience. So I am very open-hearted, which means I will take everything in and I feel everything. So I have a very good life, and I would describe it as a, I don't want, well, I guess, what am I trying to say? I guess a good life isn't necessarily easy, but it is so much better than the alternative, which is this, where you're just numb and you just kind of, you're just getting through it, And so I would much rather have a hard life, even though it's not always easy. Yeah.
Amazing. Have you heard of that Dolly Parton effect?
Oh no! What is this?
So now I'm gonna butcher my own history here, but I did hear about the Dolly Parton effect, I believe, on a podcast, and it was a podcast that was shared with me. It might have been like How to Save a World. Anyway, like the Dolly Parton effect is where, like, if you go to a Dolly Parton concert, and this is so apt for our time, it's you see everyone there of all different backgrounds, of all different cultures, and it's said that she's just got this way of bringing so many different people together, just to all have a good time, and they only focus on, like, they focus on the music, and there's no separation. But as soon as, say, like they walked away from that concert and stepped out into the car park, then they stood there would be a lot of differences, and they would be very clear. But in the concert and with the music, it's like they're all the same, and there's everyone's together again, like one big community, Dolly Parton community. And it's awesome.
Beautiful. And she's so interesting because she's famously non-political. She won't come out and support, different parties or just advocate for different politicians. But her music is highly political. And back in the day, some of it was banned for being too controversial. And so she's saying huge, huge things, like culture shifting things, like singing them. And I think she's probably one of the smartest people on the planet, actually, because she can do it in a way which brings people together, as you say, and kind of helps move them forward together, like as a culture. So, yeah, go Dolly. Be more like Dolly.
Yeah. If you learn one thing in this podcast, be more like Dolly.
That's a key takeaway.
I think we're done, and that's all. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Hey, and so tell us more about the book, like, because that's a pretty big thing, like to put that out there. I'm sure. Well, I'll let you speak to it, but where did the thought first pop in your mind, and how did you go from that first thought to actually releasing it? Was there any challenges in that Good Life experience?
Oh, for sure. So I was never planning to write a book, is the first thing to know. And last year, at the beginning of COVID, when we were all in lockdown, we were being slammed as just by people emailing us, begging for help about how to grow food, like just going, oh, the shops are running out of fresh vegetables. We're worried about being able to feed ourselves properly. Can you teach us some stuff? I'm like, okay, I'm on it. So we launched just like a YouTube series over 10 weeks, teaching people how to start a garden, how to grow things in cold weather, or how to propagate and how to keep chickens. And they were very well received. And in that process, I got contacted by the publishers of Firm Press in Melbourne, and in Naarm, and they said, "Oh, can you please write a book about basically what you're doing?" And I was like, "Oh, nah, she'll be right. There's plenty of books. You can just read my blog for free and watch this stuff for free." And they were beautifully persistent, and we ended up having some good chats about how we need more diverse voices in this space to talk about positive ways forward for our world, specifically in the context of the climate emergency, where the narrative is very much denialist or doom and gloom, and it doesn't give a lot of people a clear direction for how we could move through this well. So I was like, yeah, we absolutely need to take back that narrative and go, this is hugely scary. We can't avoid those facts. Don't want to either. It's also a massive opportunity to move forward to transform how we live and how we are on this world, how we are together. So the book is called The Good Life, How to Grow a Better World, and it's answering the question, how to live a good life in the face of the climate emergency. And it's looking at how we have done that personally, myself and my little family down here in Nipaluna. But it also highlights some amazing people around Australia, how they do it, and also thinks about and talks about whole system change. We want to do everything we can in our individual lives, but we are most powerful when we act as a collective. And so it talks about how that can happen in different areas, from supporting First Nations to energy to transport, all the things. So it's quite a multi-layered book, but it's very much threaded with radical hope, which is the concept of how to act with optimism and courage in the face of huge uncertainty, which is the climate emergency. Yeah.
Holy jeez.
Yeah, it's quite a lot, sorry.
Hey, where do I even begin with delving deeper on that one?
Yeah.
So, opening yourself up to the opportunity of writing a book. How was that? Was that scary, or was that just full of radical energy and fire to get after it?
I got to that point eventually. The first thing is, we all develop these little stories in our head when we're young children, and I think we spend most of our lives trying to unravel some of those stories. Some of them are gold and you want to keep them. Other stories say things like, "Oh, you're not good enough. You don't deserve to be here." Like these are the patterns that some of us carry. So I have some of those voices, like many of us do. And so my first response is like, "Why would you want to hear from me?" Which comes back to some of those internal stories. But I think the best thing we can do as adults is just go, that's just a story, and to face up to it and go, actually, we all have so much to offer. Oh my gosh, we have so much to offer the world. What would happen if we actually gave ourselves a chance to do it? And the life I have crafted for myself is very DIY. I do everything myself, and it is so rare for someone to come up and go, here's an opportunity to do something really exciting and we'll support you to do it. And so quite quickly I went, oh, hell yes, let's do this. Take the opportunity, Hannah, and make the most of it. So assume this is probably the only book you're ever going to write. What kind of story do you want to tell? And it's such a luxury to have been able to do that. Like, what a luxury. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love how you spoke to the publisher's thoughts about diversifying where our stories come from and who tells our stories within our community. Mm-hmm. Like what's that all about? Like why and how did you what's your role in that?
It's a great point. So I'm focusing on the climate emergency and that kind of arena. So when we look at leadership in that area, that prominent mainstream leadership, it's often men, it's often white men. And we look at leaders in the grassroots community movement to tackle climate emergency. They're mostly women, and they're often women of colour, BIPOC communities, depending on the region that's from. It's a really interesting thing that just flummoxes me. like, why aren't those people being represented in the mainstream arena, whether it's books or TV or radio, whatever that might be? I do believe it's getting better significantly over the past couple of years in particular. But how do we make more space for that to happen at every opportunity? So I was like, yeah, I can lend my voice. I'm a white woman, but I can also provide the opportunity to just showcase other voices as well, and just to point to things through my book about what's already happening and what could be happening. So that's a really interesting thing about how do we use the opportunities we are given, or we create as humans, but then how do we broaden that opportunity so we can share it with everybody, as many people as possible who need to be in that space? Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that unreal how there's that, when you look into it, there's a very clear kind of divide and two very separate kind of groups there, as like with leadership being like this male dominated space, and then this community leadership being very centered around, a large group, I suppose, of females, and really driving that, really driving that. It's just like, how do we build that bridge for that? Like we've got to build that. We've just got to build that bridge. Aren't we smarter than this?
It's really interesting. So I think that's a really complex thing to start to dive into, because I think there's many different reasons why it's happening and why it's being perpetuated. Oh, the patriarchy is one of them.
Tell me about it.
Like the blanket statement I could just say.
Yeah.
It doesn't benefit anybody. It's not just about men and women. The patriarchy is good for nobody, and so I think there's a huge opportunity there to unravel that. But one of my dear friends, Millie Rooney, who helps to head up Australia Remade, which is about rethinking how we can be in Australia, talks about how we just need to start getting ourselves elected into local, state or federal government, more diverse voices. That's men, women, all colours, all ages, but to speak about these things more audaciously and more boldly. And politics has been reserved often for white men. It's changing again, but it's a slow process. It's like, how do we start throwing ourselves into those positions of, influence, and being brave enough to have a crack? But I don't believe we have to do that in politics as well. We can do it in our communities. We can do that at the boardroom tables, in your school systems, wherever you might be. Yeah.
I love it. Just diving in there, and because and I think you've led the way in many regards with doing something like putting out a book, in that it's not always easy to put yourself out there in such a public space, in a public way. And also too, I think it's really important to note that, we don't want to just categorize it as male, female, this. And this is a beautiful thing of the time that we live in, right? Is that we now have people that don't want to identify as a certain gender. We have transgender. We have, all these different variations of humans and different, colored skin, different cultures, just everything. And it's kind of, we've got all these different, and they're probably going to continue to change too. And that's just all something that we need to continually embrace and change with it as people start to, I guess, identify how they exist in this world. And we just need to have a society that welcomes all of those different identities, because I just don't want to talk like there is just two separate gender types, and it's not
absolutely
the way it is.
I think a key thing to remember is a lot of people confronted by that, but we lose nothing and we gain everything by embracing people for their beautiful individuality. We gain everything, and some people are confronted by change. Fair enough. Just work through it and have some chats and unpack what's challenging you, and then your life will be great.
100%. Hey, 100%. Yeah. It's so true. And I think, and so I'd like to hear a little bit more, like if within the book, like do you have just like this one message that you really like wanted people to walk away from the book with having, and it might not be like spelled out in the book, but like a deeper, maybe even just like that hidden belief or message that you wanted to spread through the work?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not hidden, it's very clear. Throughout the book, I give examples of what I'm doing, and then I prompt people to explore how that could be for their own personal lives. So the key thing I hope people take away is that they explore their own personal values for how they want to be in this world. I outline my values and how that manifests in the tangible way for me. But I think regardless of whether you're working in a supermarket, at McDonald's, or in the school garden, wherever, as soon as you tune into your values, you live authentically and you connect authentically, and you start to turn up to conversations or the polling booth with that informed. And I think that's the key takeaway. And I think I don't care what you do for your life. I mean, I care about you deeply, but I have no judgment about where you choose to place yourself professionally or personally. But if you're living by your values, I think you're just winning. And I've never met a bad person who's living with their values. And I've met people where we have wildly different politics, but they're wonderful connection because I can see they're living through their values, and we find a meeting ground regardless of that political difference. And that's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
So good. So how did you work through the process of identifying your values? And how can others?
Yeah, sure. I think I write about this a bit in my book about how as a young person, as a young teenager, I was very confronted with the world, but I didn't know how to articulate that. It was a very thick feeling in my chest. I didn't quite understand why the politicians are being so corrupt. Why aren't they stopping climate change? Why is racism rife through our whole culture? It was this complete confusion. I just didn't understand. And it took, after I finished high school, I travelled beautiful Australia for quite a few years, doing lots of activism and forest blockades, social justice projects, and just trying to work out how to be in the world. And I think for me, it came down to a couple of different things. We're finding my community of like-minded people who are able to help articulate that, yes, Hannah, that sick feeling in your chest is valid. So learning to trust your intuition, I guess, is a key thing. Not dismissing it just because the majority of the world around you is doing something different. It doesn't mean that's necessarily right. So I guess finding values is learning to trust myself and understanding that, while some people say in your life as you grow up, fake it till you make it or dress to impress, it's like actually sink into yourself, soften into yourself as much as you can, and that's where you'll really start to unfold and just see that everything you need is there. I'm not there, by the way, but I try all the time. But it's the values are what makes you you. It's not what you're wearing or what you're doing. It's who you're being, and that's such a hugely hard and wonderful thing to keep coming back to. It's just the remembering. It's not the way that helps me is it's not something a new thing that I have to learn to do. It's something I have to remember because it's already there. It's just waiting for us to come back to ourselves. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Thanks so much. No, that's beautiful. I think it's very, very timely, very timely. And so to go one level deeper on that, what are the practical things that you did to be able to soften into yourself a little bit more? Because I find that a really beautiful way of describing it too. What are those what did you do, and what have you seen other people successfully do to soften into themselves and be able to understand or remember their values?
Yeah, I assume it's different for everybody. Like I can only speak for myself. For me, it's like I'm a really busy person. There's a saying where the antidote to anxiety is action, and I'm a very active person. I'm quite anxious about the state of our world and the trajectory. So I just keep myself very busy. Part of me softening into myself and my values is to remember and rediscovering joy in my life, because while my work is very centred on bringing about joy and health to other people, it can come at the cost of taking that away from my life. So joy has been incredibly important, and to me that's been this year I took up trail running, which is how I met you.
Yes.
And it's been delightful because I've done that with friends, and we with I think 2 or 3 months notice enrolled ourselves into the Taikana half marathon, which I hadn't even really run before. I was like, we'll have a crack.
So awesome.
And it's so awesome, and it was so joyful. And this year in particular, I'm like, okay, I have to pivot and center those things in my life more. And so we're doing more trail running things. And we just enrolled ourselves into something called the Triple Top thing. I can't remember, in northern Tasmania, which is described as a soul-crushing, knee-crushing run. But yeah, let's do it.
Oh yes.
Oh dear.
You legends.
I'm getting sidetracked, but
no, it's so good.
But I think a huge thing for me is to remind myself I can only be useful for the world when I'm all full up with joy and love myself. Otherwise, I am empty and I am just draining my resources. And so it's been looking like lots of fun trail running and lots of time with my beautiful daughter, like playing elaborate soccer games and just doing whatever she wants to do, and also with my partner Anton as well. And it sounds really straightforward, but it took a really long time for me to get there. A lot of counselling to work out what was okay, how to spend my time in my life, that these things were valuable things to do, as opposed to targeting climate change the whole time, or thinking about permaculture and land management for other people's properties. It's okay to make time for joy. And, it's still an ongoing process, but I can guarantee you I'm better and fitter for it.
Rad. Yeah. You couldn't have done, I don't know how much I have to pay you to say that, but that was amazing. That was great.
I'll send you my bill later.
Trail running.
It's true though, because as a young adult, my activism started with forest blockading in the Styx Forest in Lutruwita in southern Tasmania, and it was just such being in the forest, living in the forest for many months on end. It's just so beautiful, and I actively moved from frontline activism to permaculture because I'm better there. I'm more useful, more effective human there. But with trail running, and especially the Taikana half marathon, just be able to re-engage in forest activism in such a joyful, playful, effective way was such a gift. I was like, wow, I love this full circle thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
I totally feel the same. To be able to put those two things together has been I just get so much joy out of that, and being able to share it with the community. As soon as I saw Taikana Ultra, when it was its first edition, I was just I was so on board. I didn't even need to know any. I was just like, how is this? This is what we've been waiting for. This is what I've been waiting for. I can't speak on behalf of the community, but I was just like, brilliant. Let's make this happen and let's put bells on it. And the growth that it's had and the success that it's had has led to so many positive things for the community, for people, for the planet. it's just been, it's so amazing. So
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, we've got people like yourself that are now in the community as well, which is the best, like it's growing the community is in and of itself an amazing thing, but to grow it with good people like you, it's just like rad. Like, yeah. Who's this nutter running down the trail with pink hair? Like,
slowly running, shuffling along.
Well, and the cool thing is, and I hope you realize that now, it's like, it's not about speed or pace or winning or podiums. It runs so much deeper than that, all that surface level egoic stuff. So
No, and I think my friends and I were just so beautifully hit with how welcoming the community was. And like, mostly we want to keep doing it. It's like, we want to see those people again and be in those wild places. Like, the people in the place is just perfect.
Absolutely. Hey, so I'm a newbie. I've done a little bit of research in the world of permaculture, but I've got an expert. You're an expert. I'm calling you an expert. We're gonna so permaculture, right? I know it's not just gardening, but
good.
if I turned up to you and I said, "Oh, hey, Hannah, so permaculture, I'd like to be able to grow some zucchinis, and I hear permaculture is a really good way to have a garden." Like, what would you say to me, and what would you say about permaculture? Like, give us the intro.
Yeah, cool. So, as you beautifully acknowledged, permaculture is not just gardening. It's a holistic design framework that you can use to design your garden with, but you can also design a building with, or a whole town with. You can apply it to your boardroom meetings, your schooling systems, your health and well-being initiatives. It's wildly holistic, which is part of its strength. And it actually was developed in Lutruwita by Bill Mollison and David Holmgren in the 1970s. So it's living in the home of permaculture, which is quite lovely. But it's really flourished around the world, so much more so than in Australia, actually. So part of my work is just helping to highlight how relevant and good it can be for everywhere, including Australia as well. But regarding your zucchinis, I'll just say, make sure you give them good compost, good water. You'll be right. They love to grow those things.
Solid. I need to find myself a patch of soil, and I'll be sweet.
Yeah, you do need soil.
Soil's key. All right. So so it's more like, I find that amazing that permaculture can be applied to, say, like a boardroom meeting. So break that down. How can that be possible?
Sure. So at the very foundation of permaculture is 3 ethics, which is earth care, people care, and fair share. So earth care, looking after the earth, is quite straightforward. People care, looking after people. Fair share is equal distribution of surplus resources. That could be water, food, housing, all the things, and that can be applied on a global level or a micro level. So when we think about a boardroom meeting, we think about, how do we make sure everyone has fair share of voice space? So it's not just 1 or 2 people just talking at each other the whole time, but everybody gets to have their voice heard. And we think about the outcomes of the meeting. Are we meeting our objectives? And who's doing them? Is it not just the same person doing all the work every single time? So we're looking after our people. And with earth care in mind, we think about, okay, if the boardroom meeting, we might be eating food and drinking stuff. Where is that food and beverages coming from? How can we make sure our consumer choices are supporting the earth that we want to live on? So it's very much those ethics and those values come into all the decisions we make about, how do we run anything in the world? How do we design anything? How do we get from A to B? How do we live there? How do we engage with people? So they can creep into any space, any time. They're relevant, and they will go. The good thing about the permaculture ethics, it doesn't matter what climate, what culture, what context you're in. They're relevant. Yeah.
Far out. What a. Okay. All right. And so let's go further. So, all right. So, okay, if we look at permaculture like that, how is, like, what is the first step that someone would take, say, just like if they were living in, say, like a city apartment? Like, what would you be like, hey, this is permaculture, and I want you to start to embrace it in your life, and these are like 5 things that I want you to try and do?
I think it's good for people to do a bit of an audit of their home and their community and their workplace, depending on what makes up their world, I guess. And so that might be an apartment, or it could be a bigger home or a farm. It's like, where are all my resources coming from, which is food, water, clothing, all those things that you need. And I think that's a nice opportunity. Where are my resources coming from? How could they be better, I guess, which could be about, relocalizing where they're coming from, or the materials used to make them, or making sure that the people making them are treated properly and ethically. And so you can start to make those consumer choices often around how you spend your money. And I think people forget how powerful we are as consumers, or so where we put our money is a big deal, and that speaks volumes. And if you do have, the opportunity, you can grow some of your food, and that might just be one pot plant in your window to grow your oregano, whatever that might be. But even that is a significant link in the chain of joining those dots about how we can be more integrated with our food systems. And I think it depends, again, where you live, but a community is a really huge thing. So knowing your neighbours, or knowing some people in your immediate region, is a really helpful thing. Sometimes it's not appropriate, or you're just not interested, and that's cool, because introverts are beautiful people and we love introverts. And I get that. So, but there's always a way to be more connected. That might be online, or it might just be knowing your local shopkeeper's name, like those little things which make you part of place. How can you be part of your place? Yeah, which is really important. And the key thing I tell to people is rediscover your values, I guess. It's like, how do you want to be in this world? What type of human do you want to be? And that could just be coming down to being kind, being considerate, and just offering yourself to your life in the way that you want to be remembered. I don't know. There's so many things. Yeah, people often assume they need to have a big garden or a farm. You don't need any of it. You just need yourself. You just need yourself and your whole heart, and you'll be right. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Whole heart. That's it. Having your whole heart is a very, it's a very rich term. Like, it's got a lot to it. And I personally, I've tried to work on that heart space, and I guess it comes back to what you were saying before, like your intuition, like if listening to your intuition and what that tells you, or what that is ever presently saying to you. Mm-hmm. And so I guess taking it from the individual and looking a little bit more at the community, how have you been able to kind of grow like a wholehearted community, or be a part of a wholehearted community?
Oh, great question, Mael. I think I could be a better community member. Honestly, things I do, because I love the neighbourhood I live in. There's a lot of what I call the footpath community. Like, so when I'm going to the shops, or when I'm going to the park with my daughter, we run into lots of people on the footpath, and we chat to lots of people, and that's really nice. And so that keeps things alive on a daily basis, which is beautiful. The other things I've done, which are really very, very focused way, it's been to create communities, like set up a food share stand on a main street nearby, where we can put surplus produce from our garden and anybody can take it. And those kinds of touch points for community are really nice. So it's next door to the little community library, which people can take books or offer books as well. And those things help express what kind of community are we here, and how do we want to be with each other, even if we don't see each other as much as we might want to. And that's okay, especially in COVID times. I know you're in lockdown now. It's like, how can we be together while apart? And so we set that up during COVID last year, actually, because people were just like looking for more fresh food. Like, here you go, here's the fresh food. But I think those kinds of things don't need disaster to inform them. You can do these things anytime. People do street parties, which is beautiful. They look after each other when they need help. Our friends are about to have babies, so we're all madly baking and freezing things for them so they don't have to cook for the first month. Lots of fun things we can do. So it's about how. I think the key thing is like just turn up, and what that looks like will be wildly different for everybody.
Unreal. And so within. And so if we bring the context of like permaculture back into community, how important is it how they play together and interact?
Yeah, great. I think it's definitely important. I think I'm hesitant to say it's really, really important. Everybody needs to be super involved in their community, because introverts, I have deep respect, and also it's not appropriate at certain times for whatever reason. But community, there's another line in my book where I say something like, loneliness will cripple you, but community will hold you, and it's like a safety net. And that safety net can be quite hands-off, except when you need it, and it'll come swooping in and it'll hold you when you need to be held. Yeah? So I think community is critically important. It will look radically different for whoever you are, wherever you are, and that's okay. And we think one of the 3 ethics in permaculture is people care, and that includes looking after yourself, but it includes making the time to forge some of those connections, even if it's just a small handful. That is great. So what does your safety net look like, and how are you helping to build that, and how are you part of somebody else's safety net maybe? Yeah.
So nice. That's what an amazing thing to be able to work towards. I find myself using, I've got very average vocabulary. I use the word amazing, beautiful, epic, like all I've got, and I've said it about 9 times already today, so apologies. So it's like thinking of communities, and I guess to go a little bit further into that and looking at like alternative living systems, I find that really interesting, and I find that really important in this day and age, because I feel like a lot of the status quo is being challenged in that space, and there's a lot of movement in that area as well. How do you think about that, and how do you see it shaping up for the next few generations?
Well, I think it just has to happen, and like we have a housing crisis in Australia, and it's definitely in Lutruwita in Tasmania. It's really, really in our face. We need more alternative housing systems, and that could be multiple occupancy developments, which are more shared home spaces. While still having autonomy. It could be friends buying houses together so they can share that debt, which I know a couple of people have done already. We could be tiny houses being used where you don't have to own the land, but you can have long-term leases, so multi-generational leases. We need in Australia to have that housing security. Housing equals security, but also dignity for people. So how do we expect people to turn up in the world when they can't even flourish in their own selves, knowing that they have a safe place to be? Permaculture is often associated with communes, and everyone's living together and sharing everything and growing everything, and that's pretty much my worst nightmare. I did try it.
So good.
Some people will love it, and other people won't. It's not fair to expect everyone to want that kind of life. And so I think we absolutely need alternative housing solutions, and that will look maybe like some communes, maybe like some multiple occupancy, more social housing, more co-housing, tiny houses. But I think the key thing is, how do we get away from people having to go into insane debt to get a home, like just wild debt, like people in their 20s and 30s now, like a lot of my friends, no chance of buying a house because the real estate's going crazy. but they actually haven't even got an opportunity to get a good rental house, because it's like, 12 months maximum, prices going up. They have to increasingly move further and further out from Nipaluna, which is where the community is. So they're more isolated. It's culturally devastating, and it's just not actually in line with having basic human rights. And so it's a big conversation to have. And I think there's many solutions already there, but I'm not convinced the political will is there to fund some things. So like last year, our government put in however many millions of dollars into the building industry just to fund housing renovations. And I was like, why don't you put that same amount of money into building social housing? Because we have a housing crisis. We don't need middle class and high income people to get new kitchens. We need people who are homeless to get homes. So some really obvious things we could be doing here. Yeah.
It seems like when you put it like that, it's like, no fucking shit, we should get people to have a home. And it was just so classic, hey? It's like, and don't get me wrong, I've got a lot of people, a lot of friends that I love dearly that, that exact target market that of like, hey, if you've got $100,000 and you want an extra $25,000 to renovate your home, then we're happy to help you out. And it's just like, what the fuck? Like, hang on a second. Like, if someone's already got $100K to redo their kitchen, giving them an extra $25,000, like, hang on, can't we distribute this a little bit differently? Like, anyway.
That's a missed opportunity. So I think there's a lot of missed opportunities at the moment where, we have disaster and then there's just these weird Band-Aid solutions being slapped around, but not even slapped around really well. Come on.
And don't get me wrong, and I'm sure some people would roll their eyes at what we're saying here in regards to our opinions, but when you take it back to kind of that permaculture and just human ethics, it's like, why I have enough and I've got it. Like, why wouldn't I want to help someone else out? Like another human that is suffering or living on the street. Like, what is this extra $20,000 going to do for me compared to what it could do for someone who, has just whatever, like come across this way of life, unfortunately, or, like what could it do for them? And how can we uplift our whole world by understanding we've probably already got enough and we don't need more.
It's actually a great concept called enoughness, and which you've totally described. It's like when there's enough, and to embrace enoughness wherever you are. And if you're fortunate enough to have a level of privilege where you have that housing security and you have enough in your life, it's like, well, maybe you can pause there and start to think about how you could support other people to reach that similar level of enoughness.
Unreal. What a cool word, enoughness. That's now in my vocabulary.
There you go.
Very stoked on that. I also would love for you to just explain how you view problems.
Sure. So I guess I am someone who views problems as an opportunity to create something new. I love, it's not always a healthy thing, but I love to fix things. So I go, problem, what could happen here? Where is the opportunity for this new thing to occur from? So I think I've developed that because as a coping mechanism, actually, as an activist, I see myself as a positive activist within permaculture. There are so many problems. There's one option is to curl up in a ball in a dark corner and cry. I still cry all the time, but I'm in the other corner where I'm like, okay, problem, let's find that solution and let's move through it, because otherwise I don't know how to cope with everything that's been flying around constantly. How are you meant to have a good life amongst that? You have to find those solutions and help them live them into reality. Yeah.
So good, yeah. And with that, like, I suppose a lot of people probably come up to you and say, like, and want to speak to you about the way you the way you do life, the way you do your good life, and I guess, you know, diving a little bit more into the content of the book and how you put it out there to the world. What would you encourage people to do as the first step with, you know, not even a practical step, but more like a mind shift? You know, I feel like there's so much information out there, right? Like, you've got YouTube, you've got a blog, you've got websites, and now even yourself, you've got the book. But like, I kind of sometimes feel like to get people to even do that is a step too far. You know, like, how do we work on that other shift beforehand?
Like, what do you mean, the shift of consciousness, or like, what do you mean?
Almost, yeah. Like, I'd almost say that in a way, because that's I feel like that is this, or maybe I'm answering my own question here.
Go on.
Maybe it's feeling into the pain of and maybe look into those dysfunctional areas that are hard to look at, so you do get jolted to go, far out, I need to make a change here.
Do you mean like your own personal pain, like, or that you've inherited or you know, developed over your time, or do you mean the pain of the world, or both?
Is that a thing? Like, because I've, you know, coming back to speaking about, like, you know, the history, say, of the country of Australia, and the multi-generational pain and the multi-generational trauma that's been passed down, especially with the traditional owners of these lands. I feel like I never even heard of that concept until probably only like a year ago. And it's kind of blown me away to learn more about that. How do you feel? Like, do you feel that's a present thing in what we're going through at this point in time? Like, not just First Nations people, but also like the greater communities that we have?
Well, I think only First Nations people can speak to First Nations experience and the inherited trauma, but I 100% acknowledge that it is there, and it is resulting in, you know, decreased life expectancy, higher levels of disease within certain areas of the medical area. That is just 100% proven and real. I think we all have inherited things, whether that's trauma. I can't speak for anybody else, but I know I've inherited certain things which show up in different ways. I mentioned earlier about softening into myself. A lot of that is like unraveling unhelpful stories or patterns that are lodged into my brain and body. Yeah, how do we get rid of that stuff? There's another line in my book. I'm not trying to sound like a wanker author here, but it's a good line. Is when we heal ourselves, we heal the earth. It's the same action, and it's something I actually was hesitant to put in there because I don't know if I can articulate things around that concept well enough, but I really believe it. I think how we are with ourselves is how we are in the world and how we are on the world as well. And I really resonate with some First Nations writing, and what I've heard is they talk about, you know, we are not here to manage country, we are country, you know, it is, we are one. And I'm like, yes, like it really resonates deeply with a lot of people across the world. And I think that's, so when I talk about healing ourselves and healing the world, it's very interconnected. So I think yes is the answer to your question. Like, leaning into that pain, that discomfort, is hard, but ultimately I think it leads to really interesting and genuinely new things, which could be new ways of life, new thinking, which I believe is what we need. Yeah.
Nailed it.
It's like a self-help podcast now.
I know. isn't it? It's turned into a podcast for the people to a podcast for me. I'm just rocking and rolling here. No, I so appreciate it though, Anna, and thanks so much for being so open and just so open with your learnings and your sharings. It's so incredible. So before we wrap it up, I just want to come back. I did a great. I was about to sound like a wanker podcast host. I did a great podcast. Jesus Christ. I enjoyed it. I did a podcast, and I spoke to Mark Gardner about regenerative agriculture, and I learned similar to this. I just learned so much about it, and we spoke a lot about kind of soil health and health of land. And I want to get your take on soil. And is soil tell me, just go into some depths on your love affair with soil.
Mate, okay. 3 words that I should leave people with is soil is life. And I'll elaborate on that because you cannot underestimate the importance of it. Healthy soil equals healthy plants, equals healthy animals and people. We are nothing without our soil. The best rain tank in the world is healthy soil. It can hold on to water like nothing else, yeah? So if we can rehydrate our landscapes, we have good water table levels. Soil is scientifically proven to make us happier. So when you put your hands in the dirt, you have all these different little chemical reactions making your brain happy. It's not just a physical health thing, it's a mental health thing. You look across the world, there's certain cultures that worship soil. We should all be worshipping soil. We are nothing without it, yeah? I think things like regenerative agriculture, permaculture, parts of organic, ecological agriculture, they're farming crops and animals, but mostly they're farming healthy soil. And that's what every farmer should be focused on. And I believe they are usually. Some of us are distracted by other inputs, but soil is life. I said it again.
Awesome. What cultures worship soil?
Oh gosh, I'm going to have to reference that now. I have to find that for you, Mael. But you look at I have to find some links for you. Yeah, I'll get back to you.
That's cool. No, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Soil is life.
Yeah. 100%.
So good. All right. Well, let's wrap it up with that because I think that's awesome. There I go.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Hannah. It's such a pleasure to be able to have a chat and go deep on a few of the amazing things that you know so much about and that you're actually living.
Thanks for having me, Mael.
So there we have it, everyone. A really, really insightful, positive chat about permaculture and all the other great things Hannah Moloney is doing in the world. Thank you for your time and energy and joining in today. And I really hope, until next time, you keep well. And I really hope you can go, start, sit, or listen in conversation somewhere in this amazing world of ours. So take care, and thanks a lot again for joining in.